Oh yes, guys, another roster day, another roster drop, and another good roster in a row. This is the third roster in a row since Gregg Berhalter took over for his second tenure as USMNT coach that we have a good roster. Now, as Tack likes to say, it's the obvious roster. But after 4 years of getting everything but the right rosters and everything but the obvious rosters, it's still good to see, and it's still good to celebrate. And I'm very, very happy, and I'm a little gleeful because for many years, these things that Gregg is doing now, no more MLS lifers, for example, or Geo playing central, were the very thing that mainstream media called a lot of the fans toxic for asking for the last however long, and now Gregg is doing it, and of course, mainstream media is all on board because it comes from a place of authority. Funny how that works. All right, so this is the roster. We're going to dive into it. I'm also going to talk after this roster a little bit about what I expect Gregg to do lineup-wise and who I expect him to play where, and then also a little bit about what I would do with this roster. So, guys, by the way, welcome to the 11 Yanks channel. Guys, we talk about everything in the American soccer landscape. Smash that like button so other people can find this video. If you're new, hit that subscribe button so that other people can find us. These games are against Trinidad and Tobago. 16th at home in Austin, and on the 20th away in Trinidad. So, let's dig into it. First up, we have the goalkeepers, and these are the exact goalkeepers that I said we should bring in my previous roster preview that's, available last week. I'll put the link in the description below. Matt Turner, Ethan Horvath, and Gabriel Slonina. Some interesting thoughts. I was on the press conference with Gregg Berhalter, and he was asked about Horvath and Turner. It was mainly about, are you worried about Turner losing his spot at Nottingham? He sort of, didn't really address that one. A few platitudes. Yeah, he's going to have to fight for a spot. I mean, what else can you really say? But he did say that Ethan Horvath's club situation would be sorted out by the winter. So I'm pretty sure that means Gregg knows that Horvath is leaving. Where is he going? That's anybody's guess. I would advocate for either a championship move to a championship club, which I think is probably his level, or if he can't find one where he's going to go and be the clear starter, then I would say, let's go to MLS and replace old man Guzan at Atlanta. Or other, there are several spots. Like if Petkovic leaves New England, they're going to need a new goalkeeper, right? The situations like that. Potentially if Chris Brady leaves Chicago, they could use a new goalkeeper. So there are multiple situations where maybe a new goalkeeper is needed. And I think Horvath should definitely try and take advantage of that because he needs to be playing regularly at the age of 28. Gabriel Slonina is the third keeper, having a good year at UPenn, getting a lot of reps. Not only a lot of reps because it's a terrible team, so he's having to make a lot of saves, but even under pressure, right? They play out of the back. I've been watching all of his clips on Y-Scout, and it is fascinating to me how much they play out of the back and how much he is being forced to play with his feet. I'm very, very happy with this loan for him. He's showing well. I thought he might have been in that Olympic roster, but maybe UPenn didn't release him for that Olympic roster, which is actually great because now Chris Brady can start in those Olympic games. They'll be playing against Iraq and one other team, which I do not remember offhand, but I will find out and probably put it in the comments below. So those are our goalkeepers. No-brainer for me. That's our top three right now. Fullbacks, again, no-brainer. Serginho Dest and Joe Scally at right back, Anthony Robinson and Christopher Lund at left back. These are our guys, and I think it's very clear that these are our guys now, and everybody else is going to have to fight for their way into the roster. At left back, you've got Dewan Jones, John Tolkien and Caleb Wiley and even Jonathan Gomez. Those four, going to have to fight to get into, get a spot. And here's the thing. Olympics coming up means Tolkien, Wiley, and Gomez are all available for Olympics. So even between the three of them, there's going to be a bit of a fight to get into that Olympic roster. Serginho Dest and Joe Scally. And then, yeah, this is it. I mean, again, it's nice to have, four fullbacks that I feel we can rely on. Center backs, and this is the only part of the roster that I take issue with. I'm happy with the first three, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Tim Ream, and Chris Richards. Those are clearly our top three. Now, the fourth one is up for some debate. Clearly, Gregg thinks it's Miles Robinson. I disagree. I think Auston Trusty, who is now starting in the Premier League and showing his value as a Premier League center back in a back four, no less, out of position on the right-hand side of that two center back pair, is showing really, really well. And I think, another left-footed center back and potentially somebody who could take over for Tim Ream after the Copa America is something that we should be bringing him in now for. So Miles is the only MLS player on this roster. He probably won't be in MLS for long. Looks like he's going in January. I don't have massive issue with it, but I would have brought Trusty over Miles Robinson for sure. Midfielders, and it's a crowded midfield group. Paxton Aronson, Leonard Maloney, Johnny Cardoso, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Giovanni Reyna, Malik Tillman, and Luca De La Torre. I don't know if I would have brought this many midfielders, but, Leonard Maloney, I doubt he'll start at any point, but if you're defending a lead at some point, I suppose bringing on Leonard Maloney is fine. Paxton Aronson is an interesting one because it's possible, and I'll talk about this more, that Gio's going to be shunted wide for this camp because Weah and Pulisic are not here because of injuries. So he brought another backup 10 to Malik Tillman. It's also possible that they tried to get Paxton released for the Olympic camp, and Frankfurt was like, no. So, okay, well, if you're not going to release him for the Olympic camp, you can't say no to the senior camp because it's a FIFA window. So that's probably another reason why they brought Paxton in. Does Paxton deserve it? You could argue him, Gutierrez, Luna, McGlynn. They're guys who have been performing well, but not outstandingly well. And they're both behind Tillman and Gio. That's the reason I think he's here, is he might be the third choice 10 if we pushed Gio wide, right? Luca De La Torre is still injured, but apparently healthy enough. He'll probably play this weekend, and then we'll see what he looks like. Musa and McKennie, obviously, that's a no-brainer. Let's go to the wide forwards now. So with Weah and Pulisic out, it's Brendan Aronson, Alejandro Zendejas, and Kevin Paredes. And look, on the one hand, it's Trinidad and Tobago, right? We should be able to handle them with any combination of our players. On the other hand, none of these three really fill me with a ton of confidence. Kevin Paredes has been playing well for Wolfsburg, and it looks like now is starting to earn a starting spot, which is great. Zendejas had a terrible Gold Cup, but has been absolutely on fire for Club America recently. I think 4 goals and 3 assists in the last 6 games. And Brendan Aronson is, here because we don't have enough depth. We get a couple of injuries. And so it's like, well, who else do we have? But Brendan Aronson, I tell you, is really going to have to step up his game because Kevin Paredes is now here. If Zendejas shows well in this camp, if Taylor Booth continues to progress, and most importantly, if we do manage to get Luca Koleosho, who, by the way, in the press conference with Gregg Berhalter, they asked him about Koleosho. He said, I am in regular touch with Koleosho. So he's talking to him on a regular basis. I think that means eventually it's just a matter of time before we get him because he hasn't closed the door. It's not like a Amir Richardson where, Berhalter talked to Richardson and Richard said, thanks, but I really have committed to Morocco and that's who I want to play for. And so it kind of terminates the relationship. It's like, okay, well, you've made your decision. Whereas with Koleosho, he's still in talks. And I do think it'll be quite interesting to see, does Koleosho make it into Italy's senior roster? Because if not, we've got a couple of months here before, that March Nations League semifinal and final, right? Could Koleosho have committed by then? Possibly. But my point is, if he does, if Koleosho commits, Zendejas plays well, Paredes continues to grow, and Taylor Booth is a guy who's not in this camp, but will probably be in the under-23 camp, then Brendan Aronson may justifiably find himself on the outside looking in, which is the way it should be. We need depth and we need competition. And if you might have been a lock guy for the last cycle, but guess what? The new cycle, we have more depth and more talent. If you're not playing well for club, right? If you are not playing well for country, which let's face it, he hasn't mostly in the last year, then you shouldn't be here, right? Then you're no longer good enough. Surplus to requirements. That is how we get better. Fierce competition at every spot. And if you're not up to it, you're not up to it. Forwards is obvious. Balogun and Pepe. With Sargent still injured, there is no serious competition here. Jordan Pefok recently, 4 goals or 3 goals, 1 assist, 1 penalty, 1 in, the last 2 games for Gladbach, but then got injured. So he's the only guy who could have maybe forced his way into this conversation. Haji Wright got 2 tap-ins last week. Good for him, but he hasn't, been good for Coventry after being their, most expensive signing, right? Comes in, doesn't really earn a starting spot, has some really poor moments. Hopefully those 2 goals can help him with his confidence, but it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the season looks like for Haji Wright. Yeah, Balogun and Pepe are the guys. Pepe is at least coming off a goal and assist against Heracles last weekend. Let's see if he gets any minutes this week with De Jong going almost a full 90 in a very, very tough game for Lens in midweek. Let's talk about lineups. Here on the left is what I think Gregg is going to do. I think he's going to go back to a 4-3-3 or keep a 4-2-3-1. So Turner in goal, Ream, Richards, Dest, and Robinson into the back four. Midfield is going to be Musa and McKennie for sure. If he goes, he could go 4-3-3. He could go with De La Torre, which is what I've put here. But I'd be equally unsurprised to see Johnny there. And it'd be Johnny as the 6, Musa and McKennie as the dual 8s. Or he could go with a 4-2-3-1, in which case it would be Musa and McKennie in the double pivot and very likely Malik Tillman at the 10, which if you're going to go 4-2-3-1, that's probably what I would do. Actually, no, I would push McKennie wide and keep Gio central. But that's just me. And then Balogun up top, I think Gio will be on the right wing, and I think Aronson will be on the left. I think that is what we'll see because of Weah and Pulisic's injuries. Now, this is what I would do. And again, it's like, Gregg, there has never been a better time to try something here. Okay, with your 2 first-choice wingers out and not a lot of quality depth wingers to replace them, why not use this opportunity to try a 3-5-2? Turner in goal, back 3 of... screwed it up. The back 3 is Richards, Ream, and CCV. That's what I would do. Ream on the left, Richards in the middle, CCV on the right. Double, the midfield 3 of Reina, McKennie, Musa, Destin and Anthony as wingbacks, and then Balogun and Pepe up top. That is what I would do, considering these injuries. And also, we finally get to try a back 3, because when are we going to try a back 3 before Copa America? Right? When are we going to try that? We can't really experiment in March because that's the Nations League semifinal and final, right? We really can't expect, and then maybe 1 or 2 friendlies before Copa America. This is an opportunity, and look, kudos to Gregg for finally getting rosters right and for finally playing Gio Central. Obvious, things to do, but the next level for Gregg to really win over this fan base is his in-game management and his inflexibility. Those are the 2 biggest things that he needs to fix. And now he has an opportunity to try something different, to show us that he's capable of more than a 4-3-3 or even a 4-2-3-1, which is slightly different. It's improved, but he's talked about a back 3 many times. We'd like to play in a back 3. Try it. Just try it, Gregg. This is your chance to do it. I hope he does, but based on everything we know about Gregg, I do not think we're going to see that. So, guys, that's the roster. It's a good roster. I'm happy about it. Apart from that one Miles versus Trusty exception, I have no complaints, and that's good to see. Let's get the job done. Austin on the 16th, away in Trinidad and Tobago on the 20th. Have a great week, guys. Hopefully, let me know in the comments if you're going to game, because I might just be at that Austin game as well.